La Palma, part of Spain's Canary Islands located in the Atlantic Ocean off the northwest coast of Africa, is often celebrated for its natural beauty. Known as La Isla Bonita, or the Beautiful Island, it boasts lush forests, dramatic cliffs, and stunning volcanic landscapes. Beneath its scenic surface, however, lies a powerful and unpredictable force of nature, the Cumbre Vieja volcanic ridge. The Cumbre Vieja volcano is not only one of the most active volcanic systems in the Canary Islands, but also a focal point for scientific study due to its complex structure and history of eruptions. This volcanic ridge runs across the southern part of La Palma and has been the site of multiple eruptions over the past 500 years. Notable eruptions include those in 1585, 1646, 1712, and more recently 1949 and 1971. The volcano's most destructive event, however, occurred in September 2021 when it erupted after 50 years of dormancy. The 2021 eruption didn't come entirely without warning. Leading up to the event, scientists had detected an increase in seismic activity, small earthquakes known as tremors, beneath the surface of La Palma. These tremors signaled that magma was moving upward through the Earth's crust, pressurizing the volcano. Local residents and scientists alike knew the signs were ominous, and tensions grew in the days before the eruption. Despite efforts to monitor the situation, the sheer scale and longevity of what was to come surprised even seasoned geologists. When the eruption finally began on September 19, 2021, fissures along the Cumbre Vieja ridge opened, releasing fountains of lava, ash, and toxic gases. The sight was both awe-inspiring and terrifying. Streams of molten rock, glowing red against the landscape, spewing from multiple vents as plumes of ash rose thousands of feet into the sky. Over the course of the eruption, lava flowed relentlessly, consuming everything in its path and completely transforming the island's topography. Historically, eruptions from the Cumbre Vieja volcano have shaped not only the landscape, but also the lives of those who call La Palma home. While these events bring devastation, they are also reminders of the island's volcanic origins. The Canary Islands were formed millions of years ago by volcanic activity, with La Palma being one of the youngest islands in the archipelago. Its volcanic soils are rich and fertile, making the island ideal for agriculture, especially banana plantations and vineyards. However, this same volcanic legacy means that life on La Palma has always been a delicate balance between beauty and destruction. As the events of 2021 began to unfold, attention turned to the human and environmental impact of the eruption. With molten lava swallowing homes and agricultural land, the eruption quickly became a devastating disaster for local communities. While the island has experienced eruptions in the past, the intensity and prolonged duration of this event captured global attention. Scientists, journalists, and residents bore witness to the volcano's raw power as the story of La Palma's eruption continued to unfold. As we continue, we'll explore the eruption's impact on local communities, the environment, and the unprecedented challenges it posed to those living in its shadow. As the Cumbre Vieja eruption intensified, the people of La Palma faced challenges that few could have prepared for. Within hours of the volcanic fissures opening on September 19, 2021, lava flows surged down the slopes of the volcano at a relentless pace, engulfing roads, homes, schools, and farmland. The destruction was swift and merciless. Some families were given mere moments to flee their homes, grabbing only essential belongings before the advancing lava turned their neighborhoods into smoldering wastelands. Entire communities were displaced as the eruption showed no sign of slowing. The lava itself was extraordinary in its sheer volume and reach. Moving at temperatures exceeding 1,000 degrees Celsius, 1,800 degrees Fahrenheit, the molten rock consumed everything in its path, burying structures under layers of black volcanic crust that hardened into a new landscape. By the time the eruption ended, it had covered over 1,200 hectares of land, roughly the size of 1,500 football fields. More than 7,000 residents were forced to evacuate, many of whom would return months later to find their homes and livelihoods wiped off the map. One of the most devastating impacts was on agriculture, the backbone of La Palma's economy. The island is famous for its banana plantations, which account for nearly 50% of its economy. Lava flows destroyed thousands of acres of farmland, leaving many farmers without a source of income. Even those whose fields were spared faced other challenges. Thick layers of volcanic ash blanketed crops, suffocating plants and rendering the land unusable. Water supplies became contaminated as ash settled into reservoirs and pipes, exacerbating the crisis for both agriculture and everyday life. The environmental toll was just as severe. As the eruption continued, huge plumes of ash and sulfur dioxide were released into the atmosphere, creating a health hazard for residents. Authorities urged people to stay indoors, wear masks, and keep windows closed to avoid inhaling toxic particles. Air quality worsened not just on La Palma, but also on neighboring Canary Islands. Strong winds carried the ash as far as mainland Europe, where skies turned hazy and flights were disrupted. Meanwhile, the molten lava flowing into the Atlantic Ocean created an entirely new danger. When lava meets seawater, it causes a chemical reaction that produces toxic steam clouds containing hydrochloric acid and fine glass particles. This phenomenon, known as LAYS, lava haze, posed serious risks to residents and emergency workers in coastal areas. Authorities established exclusion zones along the shoreline to prevent people from getting too close to the toxic clouds, which could cause breathing difficulties and eye irritation. The eruption's relentless destruction sparked an unprecedented emergency response from local, national, and international agencies. Spain declared La Palma a disaster zone, unlocking funds for aid and recovery. Emergency shelters were set up to house evacuees, and volunteers flooded in to provide food, clothing, and emotional support. Drone technology and satellite imaging were deployed to monitor lava flows and provide real-time updates, helping authorities make critical decisions about evacuations and safety zones. Despite their efforts, the emotional toll on residents was immeasurable. Families who had lived on the island for generations were left grappling with uncertainty, unsure of when or if they would ever be able to return to the lives they once knew. The landscape of La Palma was forever changed, and the human cost of the disaster was etched into the hearts of those who lived through it. As we continue, we will delve deeper into the scientific significance of the eruption, examining how researchers studied the volcano's behavior and what insights it provided into volcanic activity and disaster preparedness. The Cumbre Vieja eruption on La Palma was not just a natural disaster, it was also a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity for scientists to study the inner workings of an active volcano in real time. For volcanologists, geologists, and climate scientists around the world, the eruption provided invaluable data and insights that could help predict and prepare for similar events in the future. The eruption began with a series of small tremors known as a seismic swarm, which started weeks before the first fissures opened on September 19, 2021. These tremors were a crucial signal that magma was rising from beneath the Earth's crust, pushing toward the surface. Thanks to advances in monitoring technology, including seismographs, GPS sensors, and satellite imaging, scientists were able to track the magma's movement and provide early warnings to the public. This level of real-time monitoring played a vital role in saving lives, as it allowed authorities to evacuate residents before the lava began its destructive march. One of the most remarkable aspects of the eruption was the formation of new volcanic vents along the ridge of Cumbre Vieja. Over the course of 85 days, a network of fissures opened, releasing lava and gases from multiple locations. This multi-vent activity made the eruption particularly complex and unpredictable. Scientists closely analyzed the chemical composition of the magma, which revealed that it originated from deep within the Earth's mantle. The lava was classified as basaltic, a type of magma that is fluid and fast-moving, which explained why the flows traveled such long distances, consuming entire communities in their path. Beyond the visible destruction, the eruption also triggered geophysical changes across the island. The weight and movement of the lava caused parts of La Palma to deform and sink. Satellite imagery captured these subtle changes to the island's topography, giving scientists a clear understanding of how volcanic eruptions reshape landscapes over time. These findings are crucial for predicting the long-term effects of volcanic activity in other volcanic hotspots, such as Hawaii or Iceland. One area of significant scientific focus was the interaction between the lava and the Atlantic Ocean. When the lava reached the coastline, it created new landforms, adding roughly 48 hectares of land to the island. This process, known as lava deltas, is a rare but fascinating phenomenon. However, scientists warned that these newly formed areas are unstable and prone to collapse, posing risks to anyone venturing too close. Studying these formations offered valuable insights into the geological processes that shape islands and coastal regions around the world. The eruption also sparked global discussions about climate change and its role in natural disasters. While volcanic eruptions are natural geological processes, their environmental impact cannot be ignored. The release of carbon dioxide, sulfur dioxide, and ash into the atmosphere temporarily affected regional air quality and contributed to climate variability. In fact, the sulfur dioxide emissions created a visible aerosol layer that cooled parts of the atmosphere for a short period, an effect scientists continue to analyze as they study the complex relationship between volcanic activity and the Earth's climate. For researchers, the eruption underscored the importance of disaster preparedness and early warning systems. In recent years, technological advancements have significantly improved scientists' ability to monitor seismic activity, but the unpredictability of volcanoes remains a major challenge. By studying the eruption of La Palma, scientists are refining their models to better predict volcanic behavior, which could save countless lives in the future. The data collected during this eruption also provided opportunities for education and outreach, with footage and findings shared widely across media platforms and scientific communities. Volcanologists on the ground worked tirelessly to explain the science behind the eruption to the public, ensuring that people understood the risks while highlighting the importance of scientific research in mitigating future disasters. In the next part, we'll explore the resilience of La Palma's communities and their ongoing efforts to recover and rebuild in the wake of the eruption's devastation. Despite the destruction, the people of La Palma have shown extraordinary strength and determination in rebuilding their lives amidst a dramatically changed landscape. As the lava flows finally stopped in December 2021, the island of La Palma was left with a transformed and scarred landscape. What was once a thriving community surrounded by lush agricultural fields had become a scene of devastation, blanketed in volcanic rock and ash. Entire neighborhoods were erased, with more than 3,000 buildings destroyed and over 7,000 residents evacuated from their homes. In the wake of the destruction, the focus quickly shifted to recovery, both for the people of La Palma and for the island's delicate environment. The eruption caused catastrophic economic losses, particularly for La Palma's agriculture sector, which is a critical part of the island's economy. The volcanic flows wiped out banana plantations, vineyards, and other farmlands that employed thousands of people. The banana industry alone, which accounts for half of La Palma's economy, suffered significant setbacks, with farmers facing the challenge of restoring plantations buried under thick layers of volcanic ash. Many are working tirelessly to clear debris and reclaim the fertile soil beneath. Meanwhile, government and European Union funds have been directed towards supporting farmers and other affected industries to help them get back on their feet. One of the most inspiring aspects of La Palma's recovery has been the resilience of its people. Despite the challenges, the community has come together to help one another rebuild their lives. Shelters were set up for displaced families, and volunteers provided food, clothing, and emotional support. Fundraising efforts across Spain and beyond brought in much-needed resources, demonstrating how disasters often highlight the strength of human solidarity. Schools reopened, temporary housing was provided, and local businesses began the difficult process of rebuilding. However, the path forward is not without obstacles. The volcanic ash and hardened lava have created new challenges for infrastructure. Roads, power lines, and water systems that were buried or destroyed now need to be reconstructed from the ground up. Some regions remain cut off, requiring innovative solutions to reconnect isolated communities. Scientists and engineers have been working alongside authorities to develop new infrastructure plans that consider the island's volcanic risks, ensuring that rebuilding efforts are sustainable and better prepared for potential future eruptions. Environmental recovery has also become a major focus. The lava flows dramatically reshaped La Palma's coastline, adding new land to the island while simultaneously damaging fragile ecosystems. Marine life near the lava deltas was severely impacted as the sudden influx of hot material into the ocean disrupted habitats and water quality. Scientists are now closely monitoring the regeneration of marine ecosystems, which will take years to recover fully. On land, efforts are underway to plant trees and restore greenery in areas that were covered in ash, with researchers studying how volcanic soils can eventually support new plant life. The eruption of Cumbre Vieja also served as a stark reminder of the importance of disaster preparedness and long-term planning. In response, local authorities are investing in early warning systems and community education programs to ensure that residents are better informed about volcanic risks. The success of the 2021 evacuations, which prevented any loss of human life, highlighted the effectiveness of modern monitoring systems and communication strategies. Moving forward, these lessons will play a critical role in minimizing the impact of any future eruptions on the island. For scientists, La Palma has become an important case study in volcanic activity and disaster management. The data collected during the eruption continues to shape our understanding of volcanoes and the processes that drive them. By learning from the events on La Palma, scientists can refine their predictive models, helping other volcanic regions around the world prepare for similar events. Today, La Palma stands as a symbol of both nature's raw power and humanity's resilience. The scars of the eruption remain, but so does the determination of the island's people to rebuild, recover, and thrive. For those who visit La Palma now, the volcanic landscape tells a story of devastation and rebirth, a testament to the island's enduring spirit. As we reflect on the eruption, it's a powerful reminder of how fragile and interconnected life on Earth is. Whether through earthquakes, tsunamis, or volcanic eruptions, natural disasters remind us of the importance of preparedness, scientific research, and community resilience in the face of adversity. What are your thoughts on this incredible story of survival and recovery? Let us know in the comments below, and if you found this video insightful, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more stories about the forces of nature and the resilience of communities across the world. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you in the next video. The Amazon rainforest, the largest tropical rainforest in the world, spans over 5.5 million square kilometers across 9 countries in South America, with the majority lying in Brazil. Often referred to as the lungs of the Earth, the Amazon plays an irreplaceable role in regulating global climate by absorbing vast amounts of carbon dioxide and producing oxygen through photosynthesis. Covering an area larger than the continental United States, this vibrant ecosystem is home to unparalleled biodiversity, housing an estimated 10% of all known species on Earth, from the elusive jaguar to ancient plant species and undiscovered microorganisms. However, this ecological powerhouse faces an accelerating crisis. Over the last 50 years, deforestation, agricultural expansion, and deliberate burning have claimed more than 17% of the Amazon. To put this into perspective, this loss is equivalent to an area roughly the size of France. The scale of destruction is unprecedented, with satellite data revealing thousands of fires ravaging the region annually, especially during the dry season from July to October. Fires in the Amazon are often intentionally ignited to clear land, but under dry conditions exacerbated by climate change, they frequently spiral out of control, spreading across vast distances. The significance of these fires extends far beyond South America. The Amazon's carbon storage capacity is critical for mitigating climate change. As trees burn, they release the carbon stored in their trunks, branches, and leaves into the atmosphere, contributing to global greenhouse gas levels. In recent years, some areas of the Amazon have even become carbon emitters rather than carbon sinks, a stark warning about the forest's declining health. Despite the devastating consequences, the drivers behind these fires persist. The expansion of soybean farming, cattle ranching, and illegal logging are among the main culprits. In particular, the global demand for beef and soy has incentivized large-scale deforestation, with vast swathes of rainforest converted into farmland and pasture. This industrial-scale activity not only threatens wildlife, but also disrupts the hydrological cycle, leading to less rainfall and increased vulnerability to droughts. As of 2024, the situation is exacerbated by the alarming rate at which deforestation enables fires to encroach into previously untouched areas. These fires not only destroy trees, but also impact the soil, making it harder for new growth to take root. This has set off a domino effect, further weakening the Amazon's ability to regenerate and increasing the likelihood of a catastrophic tipping point where large portions of the forest could transform into a savanna-like landscape. In the following parts, we will explore the human activities driving these fires, their far-reaching consequences on local communities and indigenous populations, and the efforts being made to curb this ecological disaster. The wildfires consuming the Amazon rainforest are not a natural phenomenon. Unlike many forest ecosystems that rely on periodic natural fires for regeneration, the Amazon is not adapted to burning and owes much of its current crisis to human activities. Fires are deliberately set in most cases, driven by agricultural expansion, illegal logging, and the rising global demand for natural resources. Farmers and ranchers often use slash and burn methods to clear land for crops and grazing. This practice, while efficient for rapid land clearing, has devastating consequences for the Amazon. During the dry season, which typically spans from July to October, these fires frequently escape their intended boundaries and spread into surrounding forest areas. In particularly dry years, exacerbated by climate change, these controlled burns can rapidly ignite massive wildfires, engulfing large sections of the forest. Illegal logging operations further compound the problem. After trees are felled and removed, the leftover debris, such as branches and leaves, is left to dry and becomes highly flammable fuel for fires. Logging roads also create pathways into previously inaccessible areas of the forest, enabling more widespread deforestation and the expansion of slash and burn practices. Satellite imagery from organizations like INPE, Brazil's National Institute for Space Research, reveals how these human-made scars on the landscape facilitate fire outbreaks. The expansion of industrial-scale agriculture is another significant contributor. Brazil is the world's largest exporter of soybeans and beef, and the demand for farmland to produce these commodities has surged in recent decades. The Cerrado region, which borders the Amazon, has already seen extensive conversion into agricultural land, but pressure is increasingly shifting toward the rainforest itself. In particular, soy plantations and cattle pastures have driven massive deforestation, with an estimated 2/3 of all deforested areas now used for livestock grazing. Adding to the crisis is the complex interplay of political and economic factors. Enforcement of environmental regulations has weakened over time, with insufficient resources allocated to monitoring and penalizing illegal activities. Meanwhile, certain political agendas have favored short-term economic growth over environmental sustainability, prioritizing agricultural exports and land development at the expense of forest conservation. Reports from 2024 indicate a troubling increase in deforestation-related activities, with weakened oversight emboldening illegal loggers and land speculators. The economic reliance on these destructive practices creates a vicious cycle. For many farmers and loggers, these activities are seen as a necessity for survival in a challenging economic climate. Government incentives and subsidies for agriculture can inadvertently encourage further deforestation, as small-scale farmers clear forested land to qualify for property rights or financial benefits. The fires also pose significant risks to nearby communities. Smoke from the burning forest releases fine particulate matter into the atmosphere, leading to severe air quality issues and health problems for residents. In 2019, fires were so widespread that the city of São Paulo, located thousands of kilometers away, experienced daytime darkness due to thick smoke covering the sky. This serves as a grim reminder of how interconnected the Amazon is with the broader region and the planet. As we continue, we will delve into the far-reaching environmental consequences of these fires, examining their impact on biodiversity, indigenous communities, and the global climate. The Amazon rainforest, one of the most biodiverse ecosystems on Earth, is facing unprecedented environmental damage from the fires. These fires are not just destroying trees. They are threatening the delicate balance of a unique habitat that supports millions of species of plants, animals, and microorganisms, many of which are found nowhere else on Earth. With every hectare lost to fire, countless species lose their homes and food sources. The Amazon is home to an estimated 10% of all known species, including iconic creatures like jaguars, harpy eagles, and pink river dolphins. Many of these species are already endangered due to habitat destruction and fragmentation. The fires exacerbate this problem, often burning areas critical to their survival, such as nesting sites and feeding grounds. Insects, which play crucial roles in pollination and nutrient cycling, are particularly vulnerable. As fires sweep through the forest floor, they destroy the microhabitats these creatures rely on. Similarly, amphibians, which are highly sensitive to environmental changes, suffer catastrophic losses during fires. The ripple effect of these losses disrupts the food chain, impacting predators and other interconnected species. The Amazon rainforest is a vital carbon sink, absorbing billions of tons of carbon dioxide from the atmosphere annually. This process helps mitigate the effects of global warming. However, when trees burn, they release stored carbon back into the atmosphere. In 2019, the Amazon fires emitted an estimated 500 million metric tons of carbon dioxide, a stark reminder of how these events accelerate climate change. The destruction of the Amazon also compromises its ability to regulate local and global weather patterns. The forest generates massive amounts of water vapor, which contributes to regional rainfall and influences weather systems as far away as the United States and Europe. With reduced forest cover, this natural cycle is disrupted, leading to drier conditions in the Amazon basin and beyond. The fires also have a devastating impact on the soil. The nutrient-rich topsoil in the Amazon is highly dependent on the organic matter provided by the forest itself. When fires burn this organic layer, the soil becomes less fertile, making it harder for the forest to recover. This degradation also increases the likelihood of desertification, particularly in areas already affected by deforestation and agricultural activity. Furthermore, the loss of tree cover exposes the soil to direct sunlight and rainfall, leading to erosion and the washing away of nutrients. Over time, this can transform once thriving forest land into barren wasteland, unsuitable for either agriculture or reforestation efforts. The fires do not only affect flora and fauna, they also devastate indigenous communities who have lived in harmony with the forest for centuries. These communities depend on the Amazon for their food, shelter, and cultural identity. As fires encroach on their territories, they lose not only their homes, but also sacred sites and traditional knowledge tied to the land. The situation is compounded by the encroachment of outsiders, loggers, miners, and ranchers, who take advantage of the chaos caused by the fires. In some cases, indigenous groups are forced to abandon their lands entirely, further threatening their way of life and eroding the cultural diversity that is an integral part of the Amazon's heritage. The environmental impact of the Amazon fires extends far beyond South America. The loss of carbon sequestration capacity accelerates climate change, while the release of fine particulate matter into the atmosphere affects air quality on a global scale. The fires also contribute to the loss of genetic resources that could hold the key to future medical breakthroughs, agricultural improvements, and other scientific advancements. Next, we will examine the international response to the Amazon fires, the role of conservation efforts, and what steps must be taken to preserve this vital ecosystem for future generations. As the Amazon rainforest faces its most critical challenges, the international community has started to respond with increasing urgency. Governments, environmental organizations, and activists worldwide are working to address the devastation caused by fires, deforestation, and climate change. This final section examines these efforts and the path forward for protecting one of Earth's most vital ecosystems. Global awareness of the Amazon's plight surged in 2019 when the fires reached a catastrophic scale, prompting international outcry. Since then, many countries have offered financial and technical assistance to Brazil and other Amazonian nations to combat deforestation and illegal activities. Programs like the Amazon Fund, initially spearheaded by Norway and Germany, have allocated millions of dollars to conservation projects. However, these funds are often mired in political controversies, with critics questioning their allocation and effectiveness. The European Union and the United Nations have also been vocal in their support for preserving the Amazon, emphasizing the region's role in combating climate change. The 2021 Glasgow Climate Pact included commitments from multiple nations to curb deforestation by 2030. While these pledges signal progress, the actual implementation and enforcement of such measures remain critical challenges. Indigenous groups, local communities, and environmental activists have been at the forefront of efforts to protect the Amazon. Organizations like Greenpeace and the World Wildlife Fund (WWF) work alongside indigenous leaders to monitor illegal activities, reforest degraded areas, and advocate for stricter environmental policies. Activists like the Brazilian indigenous leader Sônia Guajajara have brought international attention to the Amazon's plight, highlighting the struggles faced by indigenous peoples and the importance of their stewardship. Grassroots campaigns, including global social media movements, have also galvanized public support, putting pressure on corporations and governments to adopt more sustainable practices. Advancements in technology are playing a pivotal role in the fight to save the Amazon. Satellite imaging and remote sensing are now being used to monitor deforestation and detect illegal logging in real time. Organizations like Global Forest Watch provide accessible data that allows governments and conservationists to respond more effectively to emerging threats. In addition, research into forest regeneration is uncovering new methods for restoring damaged areas. Agroforestry, a practice that combines agriculture with tree planting, offers a promising solution for sustainable land use. Scientists are also studying how natural processes such as seed dispersal by animals can be leveraged to accelerate reforestation efforts. Despite these efforts, significant hurdles remain. Weak enforcement of environmental laws, corruption, and economic pressures continue to undermine conservation initiatives. In some cases, political leaders have prioritized short-term economic gains over long-term environmental sustainability, granting permits for mining and agriculture in protected areas. The impact of climate change further complicates these efforts. Rising temperatures, prolonged droughts, and erratic rainfall patterns are pushing the Amazon closer to a tipping point, beyond which large portions of the forest could transform into savanna. This shift would have catastrophic consequences, including the release of vast amounts of stored carbon and the loss of irreplaceable biodiversity. The future of the Amazon rainforest depends on a concerted, sustained effort from individuals, governments, and organizations worldwide. Education and awareness are crucial, as understanding the importance of the Amazon can drive public support for conservation policies. Reducing the global demand for commodities like beef, soy, and timber, often linked to deforestation, can also lessen the economic incentives for destructive practices. Reforestation projects and the protection of remaining forest areas are essential steps in reversing the damage. Supporting indigenous rights and empowering local communities to manage their lands can further strengthen these efforts, as these groups have a proven track record of sustainable stewardship. The Amazon rainforest is at a crossroads. Its survival is not just a regional issue, but a global one, affecting the climate, biodiversity, and future of life on Earth. By acting collectively and decisively, there is still hope to preserve this vital ecosystem for generations to come. The city of Messina, located on the northeastern coast of Sicily, Italy, was once a thriving metropolis known for its rich history, beautiful architecture, and vibrant culture. But on the morning of December 28, 1908, everything changed. What was once a bustling city full of life was struck by one of the deadliest earthquakes in history, forever altering its fate. Messina had long been in a region known for seismic activity. It sits on the edge of the African and Eurasian tectonic plates, making it prone to earthquakes. However, despite this knowledge, the city was not prepared for what was to come. The buildings were constructed with outdated methods and materials that weren't designed to withstand the force of such a powerful earthquake. Streets were narrow, and the infrastructure was old, making the city particularly vulnerable when disaster struck. The fact that most of the population was still asleep when the earthquake hit only worsened the situation, leaving people trapped in their homes and buildings before they even had a chance to react. The earthquake itself struck with devastating force at around 5:30 in the morning. It was a massive 7.1 magnitude quake, but the destruction was made worse by the location of its epicenter just off the coast of Sicily. Not only did the earthquake shake the ground with incredible intensity, but it also triggered a massive tsunami that slammed into the coastline, adding to the devastation. Buildings collapsed, fires broke out, and the streets were filled with dust and debris. People were thrown from their beds and entire neighborhoods were destroyed in seconds. It was an event of epic proportions, but what was even more tragic was how unprepared Messina was for such a disaster. The city had no established emergency protocols, and there were no systems in place to effectively warn the public or respond to such a catastrophic event. Many of the buildings that had once stood proudly in the city center were reduced to rubble, and the few buildings that remained standing were severely damaged. Communication systems were knocked out, and emergency services were unable to respond quickly, further complicating the rescue efforts. This lack of preparedness and poor building standards were major contributing factors to the staggering loss of life. It's estimated that over 70,000 people lost their lives in the earthquake, but the number of casualties could have been even higher if not for the incredible efforts of survivors and international rescue teams. The tragedy would forever be etched into the history of Italy and the world, serving as a stark reminder of the importance of disaster preparedness and the dangers posed by seismic activity in vulnerable areas. In the following parts, we'll dive deeper into the immediate aftermath of the disaster, the struggles of the survivors, and how the earthquake left its mark on both the city of Messina and the world as a whole. But for now, it's clear that the earthquake of December 28, 1908 not only shattered buildings, but also the lives of thousands of people, forever changing the course of history. As the dust began to settle after the devastating earthquake that struck Messina on December 28, 1908, the scale of the destruction became painfully clear. The once thriving city, full of historical landmarks and elegant architecture, was now nothing more than a pile of rubble. Entire neighborhoods were wiped off the map, and the few structures that managed to survive were severely damaged. Fires raged in the chaos, adding to the already overwhelming destruction. What was once a bustling city was now a war zone. The first hours after the quake were chaotic. With the city's infrastructure in ruins, communications were nearly impossible. There were no working telephones, no power lines, and no way to quickly coordinate rescue efforts. What made the situation even worse was that the survivors were left to fend for themselves, as no immediate help arrived from local authorities. Rescue teams were unable to access the most heavily affected areas due to the rubble blocking the narrow streets of the city, making it almost impossible to reach those who were trapped beneath the collapsed buildings. People were left stranded without medical assistance, with many injured, some unable to even move. Hospitals were overwhelmed and medical supplies were running low. Surgeons and doctors were forced to operate in makeshift hospitals, often under dire conditions. What made the situation even more tragic was the fact that so many of the city's emergency services were destroyed or non-functional. It was only after several hours that international aid began to arrive, but for many, it was too late. The city had been left to deal with the immediate aftermath on its own. At the same time, the tsunami that had been triggered by the earthquake caused additional chaos along the coast. The waves, which reached up to 3 meters in height, hit the city of Messina and the surrounding areas, further damaging the already fragile coastal structures and sweeping away entire buildings. The powerful waves caused more casualties, and many survivors who had initially escaped the earthquake found themselves caught in the deadly waves. The Italian government's response to the disaster was slow and uncoordinated. It wasn't until hours after the quake struck that any significant help came from the authorities, despite the growing number of people in need of aid. The lack of preparedness in the face of such a massive disaster left the survivors feeling abandoned, with frustration and anger mounting against the government for not acting sooner. Many people turned to neighboring regions and international organizations for help, hoping that outside assistance would provide the support the city so desperately needed. The impact on Messina's economy was equally devastating. With trade and commerce disrupted for weeks, businesses were forced to close their doors. The economic shockwaves rippled through the region, leaving many people unemployed and without basic necessities. The city's ports, which were once vital to its economy, were heavily damaged, making it nearly impossible to ship goods in or out of the region. In addition to the immediate physical damage, the emotional toll on the people of Messina was profound. Families had lost everything: homes, loved ones, and livelihoods. Entire neighborhoods were wiped out, and those who survived were left to rebuild their lives from the ground up. The psychological trauma of the event would linger long after the physical damage had been repaired, leaving deep scars on the collective memory of the people of Messina. As the days passed and more survivors were pulled from the rubble, the world began to take notice of the disaster. International aid poured in from countries around the globe, offering financial assistance, medical supplies, and teams of rescue workers. The international community came together to help Messina, but the Italian government's delayed response left a lasting sense of bitterness among the survivors. The contrast between the swift actions of foreign aid organizations and the slow response of local authorities further highlighted the deficiencies in disaster preparedness and response at the time. While the devastation was undeniable, the people of Messina showed extraordinary resilience in the face of such overwhelming destruction. Despite the lack of immediate aid, the survivors banded together to support one another, forming makeshift communities and organizing efforts to clear the rubble and search for any remaining survivors. Their determination to rebuild their lives amid such a catastrophic event marked the beginning of a long recovery process, one that would take years and require the collective effort of not just Messina, but the entire country. Next, we'll explore the long road to recovery and the challenges that the survivors faced as they struggled to rebuild their city. As the days turned into weeks after the December 28, 1908 earthquake, the people of Messina faced the daunting task of picking up the pieces of their shattered city. The scale of the destruction was so vast that rebuilding seemed almost impossible. Entire neighborhoods had been flattened, and the once thriving cityscape was now a scene of chaos and ruin. The survivors, however, showed a remarkable sense of determination. They began to organize and take action, working together to clear the rubble and rebuild their lives from scratch. In the aftermath, it was clear that Messina would need more than just physical reconstruction. It would require a complete overhaul of its infrastructure. The lack of strong building codes, which had allowed for the widespread destruction, became glaringly evident. Many of the structures that had collapsed during the earthquake were old and built without proper consideration for seismic activity. In fact, Italy had not yet developed modern, earthquake-resistant building standards, and the devastation of 1908 underscored the urgent need for change. The rebuilding process was slow and grueling. Resources were scarce, and the city's economy had been severely crippled by the disaster. Many people who had lost their homes were left without jobs, and the once bustling port of Messina was no longer functioning. Yet despite these challenges, the people of the city remained resilient. They worked together to clear the streets and rebuild their homes. Starting with makeshift shelters for those who had lost everything, one of the first priorities was to rebuild the infrastructure that had been so crucial to the city's functioning before the earthquake. Roads and bridges needed to be repaired, and the vital railway system which connected Messina to other parts of Italy had been disrupted. Rebuilding the port, which had been one of the city's main economic engines, was another top priority. Without it, Messina would struggle to recover economically. The Italian government, despite its initial slow response, began to take action in the months following the disaster. It provided some financial assistance and began to work with international organizations to help with the recovery process. However, many people still felt that the government's efforts were insufficient and that more could have been done in the immediate aftermath. The international community also continued to provide aid, and countries around the world sent resources, money, and workers to assist with the recovery. As the months passed, the survivors began to slowly rebuild their homes and businesses, but the city's landscape had been permanently altered. The once beautiful historical buildings that lined the streets of Messina were gone, and many of the city's landmarks, which had taken centuries to build, had been reduced to rubble. The loss was not just physical, it was cultural and emotional. The people of Messina were grieving for their city's past as they worked toward its future. Despite the overwhelming challenges, the earthquake also brought about important changes in Italy's approach to disaster preparedness and urban planning. In the years following the disaster, the country began to implement new laws and building codes that would better withstand future earthquakes. The lessons learned from the Messina earthquake would shape Italy's response to natural disasters for generations to come. The recovery effort also highlighted the importance of community support. In the face of overwhelming adversity, the people of Messina came together, relying on each other for help and strength. Many survivors who had lost their families and homes found solace in helping their fellow citizens rebuild. This spirit of cooperation and solidarity would become one of the defining features of Messina's recovery. In addition to physical reconstruction, there was a growing need for psychological support for the survivors. The trauma caused by the earthquake, the loss of loved ones, and the destruction of homes left many people struggling to cope with the emotional toll of the disaster. Mental health resources were scarce, and it would take time for many survivors to find a sense of normalcy. As the years passed and Messina slowly began to rise from the rubble, it became evident that the city's recovery would be a long-term process. While the physical rebuilding of homes and infrastructure took priority, the emotional and social recovery of the people was just as important. The disaster had left a deep scar on the city, and it would take generations to heal fully. However, the resilience and determination of the people of Messina ensured that the city would eventually recover and rebuild stronger than before. As we continue, we'll explore the long-term effects of the disaster on Messina's people and the city's transformation in the years following the tragedy. The earthquake of 1908, while a source of great loss, would ultimately be a turning point that reshaped the city in profound ways. The Messina earthquake of December 28, 1908 left a profound impact on the people of the city and the wider region of Sicily. The devastation was not just in the loss of lives and property, but also in the emotional and cultural toll it took on the survivors. As the years went by, the full extent of the disaster's effects on Messina and its people became clearer. The earthquake had altered the city's landscape, economy, and society in ways that would be felt for generations. One of the most significant long-term effects of the earthquake was its influence on urban planning and building regulations in Italy. Before the disaster, Italy had very few regulations in place to protect buildings from earthquakes. The collapse of entire neighborhoods during the earthquake highlighted the need for stricter building codes, particularly in earthquake-prone areas like Messina. In the aftermath, Italy made significant strides in earthquake engineering. New laws were introduced that required buildings to be designed with seismic activity in mind. These changes not only helped protect the people of Messina, but also set a precedent for earthquake-resistant construction across the country. The recovery and rebuilding efforts, although slow and arduous, brought about positive change in some areas. The Italian government and international organizations began working together to improve disaster preparedness, and in the following decades, Italy's approach to handling natural disasters became more structured. This led to the creation of better early warning systems and emergency response strategies. While these efforts came too late to save many lives in 1908, they undoubtedly saved countless others in future earthquakes, including the devastating L'Aquila earthquake of 2009. The lessons learned from Messina influenced how Italy and much of the world would approach natural disasters in the years to come. In addition to the physical and structural changes, the Messina earthquake had a profound psychological impact on the survivors. Many people who had lost loved ones, their homes, and their livelihoods struggled to move forward. The trauma of the event was something that could not easily be rebuilt, and it lingered long after the rubble was cleared. Communities had to come together to help each other heal, and families had to cope with grief and loss on a scale that was unimaginable. Counseling and mental health services, while not as developed as they are today, became an essential part of the recovery process. The emotional scars left by the earthquake would take decades to heal fully, and for many, the memories of that fateful day would never be erased. For the city itself, the road to recovery was long. Despite the immense destruction, Messina began to rebuild not just its physical structures, but its identity. The historic center, which had been reduced to rubble, was slowly reconstructed and new buildings were erected with more modern and earthquake-resistant designs. In the years following the earthquake, Messina also saw new industries and economic opportunities emerge as the city adapted to its new reality. While the scars of the past remained, Messina began to find its place once again on the map of Sicily and Italy. The story of Messina's recovery and transformation is a testament to the resilience of the human spirit. The city, though scarred, rose from the ashes, much like its people. While the earthquake was a tragedy of immense proportions, it also served as a catalyst for change in how cities and nations prepare for natural disasters. The importance of preparedness, resilient infrastructure, and community support in times of crisis became clear and the world took notice. The Messina earthquake of 1908 will always be remembered as one of the deadliest natural disasters in history. But beyond the tragedy and loss, it is a reminder of the strength and resilience of the people who lived through it. Their determination to rebuild, recover, and emerge stronger is an inspiring story for future generations. As we reflect on the legacy of the Messina earthquake, we are reminded that natural disasters, while often devastating, can also lead to progress and change. The lessons learned from Messina shaped Italy's approach to disaster response and preparedness, and they continue to guide efforts around the world today. The memory of Messina lives on, not just in the physical landscape, but in the spirit of the people who rebuilt their city and their lives from the ground up. With this final chapter, we conclude our exploration of the Messina earthquake, a tragedy that altered a city, a nation, and the course of history. We honor the lives lost, the survivors who endured unimaginable hardship, and the lasting impact this earthquake had on disaster preparedness worldwide. Thank you for joining us on this journey through history.